It's July 6th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with Japan's Fukushima wastewater release that could be as early as next month. The IAEA and South Korea will carry out a joint examination of the wastewater and release a report later this year. And Japanese reports say the two leaders of South Korea and Japan could sit down for a summit next week. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is heading to China today for a 4-day visit. Her first trip to the country as a U.S. Treasury Secretary will be Washington's latest attempt to smooth U.S.-China relations. And a rare summer storm has struck the Netherlands and Germany with winds of up to 146 kilometers per hour, leaving 2 people dead and creating traffic chaos. Japan is purportedly set to begin the release of the Fukushima wastewater into the Pacific Ocean as early as next month. The Prime Minister Fumio Kishida himself will reportedly explain the release plan to President Yoon on the sidelines of the NATO summit next week. Our Peunji reports.
The Japanese government has reportedly started to discuss plans to release wastewater from the Fukushima power plant into the Pacific Ocean as early as August. That's according to the Nikkei Shimbun on Wednesday, a day after the International Atomic Energy Agency released a comprehensive report confirming the safety of Tokyo's discharge plan. The UN Nuclear Agency said that following a 2-year review, it finds Japan's plans to be consistent with international safety standards.
The IAEA said its report is not a recommendation and that the agency is not in a position to approve the discharge. It said whether to release the water or not is up to the Japanese government, using the phrase national decision. And what this means is that the person that has the right within the legal system can make that decision.
But the controversial plan has sparked anxiety and anger at home and abroad, as local fishermen in neighboring countries such as South Korea and China have been strongly protesting against the plan. The Japanese government will likely ask for more support.
Japan will continue to provide explanations to the Japanese people and the international community in a sincere manner based on scientific evidence and with a high level of transparency.
Japan's Mainichi Shimbun reported Wednesday that President Yoon and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida will sit down for a separate bilateral meeting on the sidelines of the NATO summit in Lithuania next week. It added that Kishida will likely explain the safety of Japan's plan to discharge Fukushima wastewater into the ocean and ask for South Korea's support and understanding. Peunji, Arirang News.
And in the meantime, the IAEA will jointly conduct an additional analysis of the wastewater samples with the Korea Institute of Nuclear Safety. According to the IAEA on Tuesday, the agency, along with the Almera Research Center from the Korea Institute of Nuclear Safety, will conduct a second and a third analysis of the contaminated water samples. The two agencies will see if radionuclides are detected at active concentrations above the safe limit. It will also see if it matches the results released by TEPCO, and the results are set to be announced in the second half of the year. The South Korean government says the IAEA report should be respected while remaining cautious, saying that South Korea will make its own review of the report. Our political correspondent Lee Si-hoo tells us more.
South Korea's Office for Government Policy Coordination on Wednesday morning said that it respects the IAEA's report, but as for its contents, South Korea is conducting an independent review.
We're in the final stage of the review and will explain the in-depth analysis we carried out once we give our final announcement on the IAEA report.
Furthermore, the government will closely cooperate with the Japanese government to continuously monitor the process to see if it's being carried out as planned. There will also be unprecedentedly intense inspections when it comes to the country of origin of imported seafood products. Meanwhile, the report prompted a clash between the rival parties at the National Assembly, with the ruling People Power Party and the main opposition Democratic Party holding emergency meetings to discuss the issue Wednesday morning. The PPP's floor leader Yoon emphasized that experts in the field worked for 2 years to finalize the report, implying that the report has credibility. He also assured that there will be no imports of seafood from the Fukushima region. The PPP leader Kim Gi-yeon echoed Yoon's comments but also questioned the DP's motives for denouncing the report. He said that the opposition, which refuses to believe the IAEA report, has an ulterior motive like making the current administration step down. The DP, which was the ruling party until around a year ago under the Moon administration, has previously shown its trust in the IAEA. However, this time, the party has called the report, quote, empty, and said that it does not show the results of the test or inspection results of the liquid processing system's performance sufficiently. The DP leader Lee Jae-myung has urged that we should ask questions, argue, and take responsibility for the issue in order to protect people. The party also said that it's considering introducing a bill that aims to ban seafood imports from all regions of Japan if Japan decides to release the wastewater without permission from South Korea and other nearby countries. An overnight protest is also being planned by the DP. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
Now, speculations are high that Japan will go ahead with the plan next month. And today, the IAEA chief's trip to Japan comes to an end before he comes to South Korea tomorrow. For more on the issue, we're joined by Mr. Walter Sim from the Straits Times this morning. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Walter, first off, according to Japanese reports, Japan will push ahead with the release next month, August. Now, how likely is it that Japan will do that? I mean, why is Japan trying so hard to start the release this summer in particular?
Well, Japan has been saying for months that the discharge will begin around summer. There are some conflicting reports in Japan as to when this actually will start. It could be in August, like the Nikkei reported, but it might also be slightly pushed back given that municipalities in northeast Japan are gearing up for local elections, and there are fears on the impact of summer tourism as well in the region. Nonetheless, I think the IAEA final report, which is at 129 pages long, that Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida received on Tuesday was the game changer, given that it vouched for the plan's safety. All the necessary equipment is also in place at the site. As for why this summer, well, space is fast running out at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant. There are currently more than 1,000 storage tanks. There are more than 1.3 million tons of water. Water is still being accumulated every day. These tanks are nearing full capacity, and plant operator TEPCO says there is no more space to build new tanks. And this space, TEPCO says, is needed for the decommissioning process. And this process is expected to be completed only around 2051. And if the water is not dealt with, it could be further delayed. So I guess this is why there has been some urgency in releasing the water. And Japan is saying that this needs to be done starting this summer.
Then let's say the wastewater does get released next month, then how is Japan actually planning to oversee the years-long process?
Well, rather than years long, I guess it's decades long, since the discharge, when it starts next month, is expected to continue until the full decommissioning of the plant, which, as I said earlier, is expected only around 2050s. So Japan is promising transparency. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida is also going to ramp up diplomacy and provide scientifically backed explanations throughout this process. The IAEA yesterday also set up a permanent office in Fukushima. It says in its report that it is going to provide live online monitoring of the process on its website, and it will continue to conduct random interlaboratory tests of the impact on water in the Pacific Ocean.
Right. And also this week, the IAEA chief, Rafael Grossi, visited the Fukushima nuclear plant and met with Japanese fishermen who are strongly opposed to the plant. Now, Walter, how successful do you think his trip to Japan was? I mean, do you think the trip and the report were convincing enough to persuade those who are against the release? I mean, and also, what's the public sentiment in Japan at the moment?
Well, interestingly, when you talk about public sentiment, it's actually quite split. The general public, according to several media surveys over the weekend, the general public is in support of the release of the water. But of course, this sentiment shifts drastically when it comes to the northeast region, where the release of the water would have a direct impact on their day-to-day lives. You asked how successful do I think the IAEA chief's visit was? Well, it was successful in the sense that he managed to complete all that is on his to-do list. He handed over the report, he oversaw the launch of the office in Fukushima. On that note, his trip was highly successful. But as you rightly pointed out earlier, the impending water release kind of dredged up a lot of very understandable fears and anxieties, especially since, the science may be sound, but there is always the potential for reputational damage and negative publicity, and this has an additional impact on the livelihood of local producers, fishermen, agriculture, farmers in the region. And to be honest, this, if I may be blunt, right, if the report were convincing enough, then there is actually no need for South Korea to be doing its own independent review. There's no basis for countries to maintain its import restrictions on or bans from around Fukushima, since the IAEA itself says there is nothing to fear. So I do think that, there is a lot of room for controversy, a lot of questions that the IAEA still has to answer despite the report.
Right, and also it's all about making the public feeling safe about the water being released into the ocean, and also has to do with the consumption of seafood possibly from that region. Maybe that's why.
Definitely, yeah.
Speaking of negative reactions from the Japanese fishermen, we also have to talk about the reactions from other countries. Now, U.S. in support of the IAEA's approval, and China is clearly against the plan. Now, how will Japan, do you think, convince China?
Well, this is a very difficult question, because I do think that there are geopolitical elements in play as well. Yes, as you pointed out, China is very strongly against the plan. And interestingly enough, the IAEA expert panel comprised nuclear safety experts from 11 countries, including China. But despite that, China said that, the IAEA report failed to carry the full conclusions of those involved. It accused Japan of using a foregone conclusion, since its decision to release the water came before the scientific backing. So I do see kind of a political element to this. The discharge, no matter how safe, can be easily weaponized for geopolitical purposes. And by being vocal, I think China can portray itself as a defender of the interests of countries in the Pacific Island, amongst the Pacific Island nations that it has been trying to woo to its corner. So whilst it definitely is very important, and I highly applaud Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida's efforts in terms of constant diplomacy by establishing talks at all levels, I actually do not think that Japan will fully convince China of its plan until the results of the discharge are in, and the results can speak for themselves.
Sure. All right, Walter, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Japan this morning. You have a great day.
Thank you very much.
The U.S. Federal Reserve reportedly faced divisions when pausing its rate hikes in June, a decision that the Fed chair had emphasized was made unanimously. The minutes from the Fed's June meeting released on Wednesday show, while almost all officials deemed it appropriate or acceptable to keep rates unchanged, some would have supported a quarter-point increase. However, the Fed decided to hold off on raising interest rates, citing the time needed to assess the impact of the previous 10 straight runs of hikes. But the minutes also show that almost all agreed with a hike in the coming July meeting set for 25th and 26th. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen will be in China for 4 days from Thursday, following U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's recent visit. Now, her trip will aim to soothe the tense U.S.-China relations. Our Choi Soo-hyung reports.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is visiting China starting from July 6th to 9th to discuss economic and trade relations. This marks the second visit by a high-ranking U.S. official recently, with U.S. Secretary of State Tony Blinken previously visiting in June. Yellen is expected to meet Prime Minister Li Qiang, Vice Prime Minister He Lifeng, Minister of Finance Liu Kun, and other key Chinese figures. Yellen, who has previously served as a chair of the Federal Reserve, has advocated for an improvement in U.S.-China relations. Experts anticipate that the agenda will include U.S. de-risking and China's export control on rare metals. Recently, the U.S. has restricted its advanced technology supply chain in a strategy known as de-risking. In response, China has retaliated by imposing sanctions on the U.S. semiconductor company Micron since May in order to strengthen its negotiation power. On July 3rd, China also decided to control the export of gallium and germanium, which are crucial rare metals used in semiconductor production. Secretary Yellen's visit to China could have significant importance for the future direction of competition and conflicts between the U.S. and China. Chinese media outlet Global Times have stated on Wednesday that there should be specific discussions on how to address the issues that have harmed the development of economic and trade relations between the two countries. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
Now, over in the Netherlands and Germany, the two countries were slammed by a rare summer storm on Wednesday, killing 2 people and paralyzing air travel and train services. Lee Sin-jae with more.
Packing howling winds of up to 146 kilometers per hour, Storm Polly brought hurricane-force winds to Western Europe, slamming both the Netherlands and Germany on Wednesday. According to the Associated Press, the storm has taken the lives of 2 people, a 51-year-old woman in the Netherlands and a 64-year-old woman in Germany. Polly is said to be one of the most powerful summer storms to impact the Netherlands in 50 years, leading to the cancellation of some 400 flights from Amsterdam's Schiphol Airport, one of Europe's busiest hubs. Rail service was also severely impacted across the northern part of the country. The National Meteorology Institute issued its highest code red storm warning for the Noord-Holland province and urged residents not to leave their homes. The German Weather Service, meanwhile, issued a level 3 red warning, the second highest level for northern parts of the country, including Hamburg. The powerful winds have also toppled dozens of trees in Amsterdam, damaged cars and houseboats, and injured several people. The number of fallen trees rose due to them becoming brittle from an unusually long dry spell in May and June. Downed trees also led to a highway north of Amsterdam being closed, while tram and bus traffic was heavily disrupted in the capital. Winds have eased up a bit, with the Royal Netherlands Meteorological Institute downgrading the storm to code yellow. The storm is considered quite rare for this time of year, as windstorms like Polly are usually seen during the late autumn to early springtime period. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Summer heat is back after all the monsoon rain here in South Korea. Now that means it's beach season for an escape from the sizzling temperatures. Our Song Yu-jin went to Gyeongpo Beach, one of the first beaches to open this summer.
With temperatures jumping as high as 35 degrees Celsius this week in South Korea, it's time to cool off from the sweltering heat. Beach season is finally here for people to enjoy some fun in the sun.
So right now I'm at Gyeongpo Beach, located in South Korea's east coast city of Gangneung, and this is one of the first beaches that open up to the public this year. Now, opening on the beach might sound a bit confusing. So basically, you can still go inside the water before the official opening, but the difference is that there are no lifeguards, shower booths, or tubes you can borrow.
More than 135,000 sunseekers have visited Gyeongpo Beach as of Wednesday after it opened on July 1st. This is a 30% drop compared to last year's early days, but that's because the beaches had opened earlier.
Last year, we noticed scorching temperatures from mid-June, leading to early beach visits before the official opening. Because we were concerned for visitors' safety, we opened the beach a week earlier this year.
But as this is the first summer with no social distancing rules, more beachgoers are expected than the previous years.
I can definitely see more people than last year, and no one is wearing masks this year. I can really feel that COVID-19 is over.
For our generation, Gyeongpo Beach was the #1 travel spot. The scenery is still amazing like before, and I remember bringing my kids swimming when they were young.
Throughout this week and next, a total of 264 beaches across the country will join the party until they close late next month. So if you're looking to cool off this summer, it's time to grab your shades, put on some sunscreen, and hit the beach. 송유진, 아리랑 뉴스, 강릉.
Good morning, I'm Matthew Ashley, and we now turn over to stories from around the world. Iran is facing international legal action over the 2020 downing of a Ukrainian passenger plane that killed all 176 people on board. Legal paperwork was filed on Tuesday to the International Court of Justice by Canada, Sweden, Ukraine, and the UK. The 4 countries are seeking damages for the victims' families. Flight PS-752 was shot down by 2 missiles fired by Iran's Revolutionary Guards shortly after the plane took off from Tehran airport. Iranian officials called the incident a, quote, disastrous mistake that came at a time when tensions between Washington and Tehran were high. It said its air defense unit had mistaken the Boeing 737-800 for a U.S. missile. But the 4 countries said in court filings that Iran had violated a series of obligations under international conventions on civil aviation when it shot down the plane, and that Iran failed to take all practicable measures to prevent the plane's downing. Moving over to France now, 16 people were arrested in connection to urban violence on Tuesday evening as the recent unrest in the country subsides. According to the country's transport minister, the calmer situation means France's bus and trams will resume normal night services from Wednesday evening local time. They were ordered to stop operations from 9 p.m. throughout the country over fears of arson attacks. France saw almost a week of violent protests following the killing of a teenager by a police officer during a traffic stop on June 27th in the Paris suburb of Nanterre. The peak of the unrest on Friday night local time saw police arrest 1,300 people. Now, 3 Just Stop Oil protesters have been arrested after interrupting 2 matches at Wimbledon on Wednesday. The first interruption came during a match between Grigor Dimitrov and Sho Shimabukuro when 2 protesters entered the court. One threw orange-colored confetti and jigsaw pieces, while the other sat cross-legged on the grass court. The second interruption was during the match between Katie Bolter and Daria Saville when a 3rd protester ran onto the same court, littering it again with orange confetti and puzzle pieces. Just Stop Oil says the protesters are demanding the UK government halt the issuing of all new licenses for extracting oil, gas and coal. Wimbledon is not the first sporting event to be targeted by the group. Last week, its activists interrupted the first day of the 2nd Ashes Test. And finally, Hong Kong-born singer-songwriter Coco Lee has died at the age of 48. According to members of her family, the pop artist passed away after a suicide attempt on Sunday. Although hospitalized, Lee could not be revived from a coma and died on Wednesday. Her sisters confirmed that Lee had been battling depression for a few years. Raised in the US, Lee launched her pop career in Hong Kong after winning a song contest. Her popularity peaked in Asia in the 1990s and 2000s, and she was known for voicing the lead character in the Mandarin version of Disney's Mulan. Her R&B infusion with Western hip-hop made her popular in the US as well. She often released albums in both Mandarin and English.
Good morning. Those of us in the central parts of the country had some comfortable afternoon temperatures yesterday, and now we need to brace for sweltering highs that are going 2 to 5 degrees higher than yesterday. Daegu and Gyeongsan-do provinces will have searing heat under mostly sunny skies. So a heat wave advisory has been issued for southeastern regions, while some parts east of Gangwon-do and Gyeongsan-do provinces are under a strong wind advisory. And with the heat waves pouring, it's important to stay sun-smart as well. Those in the south coast regions, Busan, Gwangju, and Jeju face an extreme UV risk this afternoon. In Gwangju sees a high of 33 degrees, Chuncheon at 31 degrees Celsius this afternoon. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. Have a wonderful day.
Welcome. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? Welcome. (24시간) 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
Hello, I'm Gustav Slamečka, Czech ambassador. Arirang TV is doing its best as a media diplomacy channel representing Korea by delivering current affairs information and news in a balanced voice. Everyone I meet can get news about Korea through Arirang, and we are thankful. I hope Arirang TV will continue to take the lead in delivering Korea's news to the world, and I hope it will be a channel for the world and Korea to synthesize. Resonating with the world, Arirang.
Hi, my name is Paul and I'm a sweaty comedian.
Hi.
My name's Paul and I'm a sweaty Canadian.
Hello, I'm Evan and I am also Canadian.
참았어.
너 여기가 어딘지 기억해? 잘 생각해봐. 여기가 어딘지. 도망가!
한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, who's wrong? Make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.
We're here to make a new type of news. New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's July 6th here in Seoul. I'm Yoon, and this is News Generation, where we make the news at Arirang's very own open studio. Every morning, we'll discuss the top issues and latest current affairs affecting people in their 20s and 30s. Joining me in the studio is Nal Song. Good morning. And Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. Earlier this week, South Korea said it would start investigating whether some 2,000 undocumented babies born since 2015 are safe. The country's national police agency found a total of 420 so-called ghost baby cases as of 2 p.m. Tuesday. Officers are currently looking into 400 of them. In just a single day, the number of cases that require investigation doubled, and so far 15 have been found dead. And now that the weather has gotten a lot warmer, more beaches have opened up to the public in Korea. But the local Coast Guard is asking those heading to the EC to be extra careful as they've discovered sharks in the area. Even great white sharks, the species made famous by the film Jaws. The Sokcho Coast Guard station in Gangwon-do Province on Sunday said many fishermen found dead sharks near ports. And moving on to what's happening in Japan. The lunch menu of a salary man has garnered over 20 million views on Twitter. A 45-year-old man has reportedly saved around $692,000 by eating simple meals like this every day for 20 years. One photo shows a bowl of rice, a piece of pickled plum, and some egg rolls. Now we're going to take a closer look at the simple menus this man has eaten for the past couple of years to save up so much money. One time he had just 컵라면 with a boiled egg. Another time he only had white rice with miso soup. And the username of this man shows his life motto. His username translated to English is retirement man. In an interview with local press, he said his main goal is to save up and retire early because he finds himself without any talent for investing in stocks. He just decided to save up his salary and reduce living costs by cutting down on expenses used for food and his house. And the house he's living in, this is what caught my attention the most. He only uses $207 a month, which he said is fine because he often stays late at the office and frequently goes on business trips. He added that he is afraid, though, about what would happen when an earthquake hits because there's so many cracks on the wall. So you can just see how much this guy is saving up on living expenses. And what was your initial reaction when you heard about his story?
Well, I actually really admire this guy because I'm one of those people who spends a lot of money on unnecessary things like coffee every day. Like,
hey, that's a necessity. It's a necessity.
It's a necessity, however,
It's
like
not.
several cups a day is not a good thing. And you know, some people will call him frugal and some people will call him stingy. I mean, I don't think he would make the best partner per se because
That is so true.
yeah, I mean, he would want to either make sure you go halves every time you go out on a date, or he would count every cent, so he wouldn't be the best friend or the best partner.
Yeah, can you imagine trying to date this guy and then he's like, oh no, I have to go home and eat my 컵라면 with
Yeah,
rice.
you can join me if you want, but you have to buy your own tofu.
Or he brings his own food to like the restaurant.
Yeah.
That'd be weird.
Ooh.
So, but if he's okay with this low spending lifestyle, I really think it's a great thing. I couldn't blame him, so good on him.
What about you, Nell? What was your initial reaction?
Yeah, I mean, when I first saw this, I was kind of like, the menu looked very simple, and he even said the egg was actually a luxury that he has once in a while. I respect that so much because, you know, self-control, and like Walter was saying, you know, great job saving up and self-control, and, you know, he said he doesn't have a lot of talent in investment, so the idea behind this is great, but I personally am more of like a YOLO girl. Not to go overboard, but you do only live once, and I don't know when my life is gonna end, so I want to save moderately. I want to enjoy the good things of life, you know, in moderation.
You want to enjoy the moment.
Right, okay, not like to the full point that I go bankrupt, but you know what I mean? To do everything kind of balanced.
And as a person who loves food, I just need to spend a lot of money on food. But not like too much, as you said, it's not excessive. But when I have my one meal of the day, like, of course I have all three, but if that one meal has to be really nice.
But I think it's very common amongst our generation to either go save so much money or really just go all out on spending just because we feel like it doesn't matter anyway.
It feels like, you know, just because I save this much money, it's not like I can buy a house or anything.
Right.
So I think that's why a lot of people can relate to the YOLO comment you made, including myself. And that was our news feed for this Thursday. Let's move on to our discussion topic. Today we're going to be talking about health issues, and that's because there's a specific disease that's putting many young people at risk. To find out what it is, take a look at the screen.
Colon cancer. That's what recent studies found to be killing more youth than seniors. Researchers from Washington University School of Medicine found the number of people with this disease spiked among those aged between 25 to 29. In just 29 years, the number of people in this age group with this disease jumped by more than 21%. Why? Experts haven't pinned down an exact reason, but they believe it's because of how our generation eats. In the last 30 years, we've seen our generation consume excessive amounts of sugar and saturated fat. Today, NewsGen aims to look into this health phenomenon by answering 3 questions. 1. Why are more people from our generation suffering with colon cancer? 2. What are some main symptoms to look out for? 3. How can we better tackle this disease or even better prevent it?
Today we're going to be talking about a disease threatening many people in our generation, colon cancer. Now, why don't you first walk us through how common this disease among our generation?
Yeah, to help you guys see better, I've actually prepared this graph to compare how common it is in Korea compared to other countries. So if we can have the graph up. So this graph is actually showing how many people out of 100,000 are getting colorectal cancer. As you can see, Korea came in first with 12.9 people, and Australia followed right after with 11.2, the United States and Slovakia right after that in third place with 10 people. But this actually is a number for Korea that's been increasing on a 4.2% since last year, and this is an increase in the 20s and 49-year-olds between everybody in between. So we should definitely be aware of this.
Right, what's frightening is that it's really common amongst young adults. But why do you think this is the case, Walter?
I think it's really frightening that the top 2 countries that seem to have the most cases are the ones that I grew up in.
Australia and Korea.
So I feel like it's twice in danger. So anyway, hopefully the rest of this episode goes well. I believe it comes down to what we eat, obviously. We mentioned it in the earlier on. A lot of the best foods in the world, I mean, the fatty foods, the good sugary foods. I can't get enough of them, but yes, the convenience of it has made our lifestyle different.
For sure.
So, you know, we can quickly just grab a burger after work.
Or 컵라면, you can just pour heated water inside a cup.
Exactly, and it tastes so good. It's also down to people's lifestyles as well. I mean, since we have turned into this fast tech moving society, and then pairing that with, you know, the accessibility to quick, fast food, I see a lot of people, you know, exercising less or just spending too much time on the couch. And though we've seen also trends that promote health, like the body profile trend that went around, that is still not that good for your colon, I believe, because they go down to a very low fat percentage rate, and they're not eating a lot, and they just want to get those six-pack abs. I also
Not to mention, it happens in a very short amount of time.
It's extreme.
Yeah, exactly. So I can't imagine that would be good for your colon as well. And of course, the obvious signs of like smoking, heavy drinking, etc.
And stress. I think all diseases come pinned down to stress. For many illnesses, particularly cancer though, early detection and prevention is key. That's why we're going to see if we tick any of the boxes suggesting that we have colon cancer. I've prepared a self-diagnosis test where you can see whether you have colon cancer or the symptoms. So take a look at the screen. Here are 5 questions you can use. The first one is, are you tired for no reason? Do you feel sometimes lightheaded? Do you often suffer from indigestion and feel like vomiting? Do you feel like you haven't completely emptied your bowels after going to the toilet? And last but not least, has your stool become thinner? Now, these are the 5 questions that you can use to see if you have some of the symptoms for colon cancer. And I see you guys have also been listening carefully. Yeah. How many boxes did you tick, Walter?
I said before that I hope this episode gets a little better, and it hasn't, because I think I tick most of those boxes.
How many? Actually?
Like 5.
5 out of 5?
Yeah.
So you feel lightheaded for sometimes, and you're tired for no reason?
Yes, I do. Like, even though I have a child, but I do
That's a reason.
That's a reason, but I think that it doesn't, it's not because of her that I'm tired.
Oh my gosh, well, we'll have to see what happens. You need to get a colonoscopy then.
Yeah,
soon.
well, it's booked.
Okay, that's really nice. What about you now? How many boxes did you take?
I just have 1, and it's feeling lightheaded, but I've been told it's because I have low blood pressure, you know, so I'm not sure if it actually has to do with it, but now I'm scared.
Yeah, that's the thing. You always have to be aware whether you tick any of these boxes. It's really nice to self-diagnose yourself. But more importantly, you should often go to the doctor and get a regular checkup like yourself, Walter, and we'll be connecting to one soon to actually hear whether you're okay. But before we do that, let's come talk about how eating habits and bad health habits can cause things like this type of cancer. And we asked our viewers if they have any bad habits of their own that ruin their health. So let's hear from them of what they had to say about today's discussion topic. Take a look at the screen. So CPMN said sugar addicted, including breakfast cereals like Captain Crunch. I also like mayo, ham and cheese sandwiches, especially Subways. I love pancakes, waffles, and buttery bread toast with over easy eggs that are oily. You know what, CPMN? I completely agree with you. I love all those. Now, Try 3609 said lying down while snacking. This is the worst. Sleeping just after eating heavy meals. These are some bad habits for my digestive system and my body. And SG6PJ said, I take a short nap just after eating a meal. I know it may cause esophagitis and make me gain weight, but I can't help it. You know what? I totally agree with all of our viewers here. These are some habits that I have of my own, and I wish I could fix them very soon. And we're going to be now talking to a doctor to find out how we can better prevent or stop doing all these bad health habits and eating habits, and also find out how we can treat colon cancer. We'll include her in our talks right after this. So what better way to find out how we can treat colon cancer than to hear from a doctor? That's why we prepared a live interview with Dr. Alice Tan from Ms. Medi Women's Hospital. Welcome, Dr. Tan.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Dr. Tan, speaking from a medical expert's perspective, what are the main causes of colon cancer?
So when we talk about cancer, we talk about risk factors for cancer. And the risk factors for colorectal cancer that are known are older age, obesity, diabetes, smoking, alcohol intake, family history, and also a diet that's high in processed or red meat and low in dietary fiber. In terms of the cause or why colon cancer happens, the most accepted theory is that changes occur in the genes of the cells within the colon, and that leads to uncontrolled growth of the cells. That will lead to a polyp, and if the polyp is not treated, then over time the polyp can turn into cancer, and that's called the adenoma to carcinoma theory for the development of colon cancer.
Oh, I see. You just mentioned that it comes out in a lot of older people as well, but why is it that we see more increasingly that we see it amongst young adults as well?
Right, so that's a very good question. Recently released study out of Seoul National University identified alcohol intake, not just the amount of alcohol, but also the frequency of alcohol intake, increased the risk of early colon cancer, and that's early onset, meaning colon cancer in people younger than age 50 years old.
Wow.
And many people may not realize that the incidence of early onset colon cancer is increasing. Right now, it makes up about 10% of all incidents of colon cancer, but it's particularly increasing in high-income countries. And it most likely has to do with dietary factors, as you identified earlier.
I see.
Doctor, I'm a mid-aged, mid-30s man who feels like he's a lot healthier than I don't eat too many bad foods. I'm a little worried now after doing that little test. What are the worst case? Well, can I ask more like what to expect if colon cancer were to occur? Are there any symptoms I should be looking out for?
Well, you mentioned some of the symptoms before, but the important thing is in young people, sometimes symptoms can be overlooked by both the patient and the doctor. They can be rationalized. So if a person has any blood in the stool after having a bowel movement, if the person has abdominal pain, weight loss is actually a late symptom. So is being lightheaded, because that would indicate that you've lost so much blood through the stool that you've actually developed anemia. If there's abdominal pain as well, we talked about the change in bowel pattern. So not just thin stools, but constipation can also be a symptom of colon cancer. So these are all signs and symptoms to look out for, and you should bring them to the attention of a doctor if you have them. It's very easy to overlook in a young person, both by the patient and the doctor. So it's important to make sure that it's evaluated thoroughly.
For sure, and I think one of the reasons behind that is because we're not really recommended by our doctors to have a colonoscopy, especially in your 20s. But should we though, now that we're seeing a higher rate of colon cancer among young people?
Well, so screening for colon cancer should be related to a person's risk. And in the United States, the age for screening for colon cancer actually was decreased from 50 years old to 45 years old.
Wow.
Specifically because of the increase in early onset colon cancer. In South Korea, the age for screening is still starting at age 50.
Right.
But as we mentioned, the incidence of early onset colon cancer is increasing. So there has been some discussion about decreasing the age for screening for colon cancer in South Korea as well, and what types of modalities would be most appropriate in a younger person. Now, screening happens when a person is asymptomatic, but definitely if you have symptoms, that's something different altogether. That's when you're looking for a diagnosis for those symptoms. And if the symptoms are suggestive of colon cancer, your doctor will determine what line of testing you require.
Right. Apart from screening, though, is there one other way that we could better prevent ever catching this disease?
Right. So I talked about the risk factors. Some are non-modifiable. You can't change your age, but many of these risk factors are modifiable. So if you stay normal weight, so avoid obesity, you decrease the sugar that you're consuming, you don't smoke. And also we talked about alcohol. Many people may not realize that in South Korea, moderate consumption of alcohol can increase the risk of early onset colon cancer by 9%. If you have heavy intake of alcohol, your risk of early onset colon cancer increases by 27%. And what we mean by moderate consumption is actually 1 can of beer or 1 glass of wine per day. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but that's what moderate means. And heavy alcohol intake is for a woman more than 20 grams of alcohol per day, for a man more than 30 grams. 1 can of beer has 14 grams. 1 glass of wine has 14 grams of alcohol. So for a woman, if you've had more than 1 can of beer or 1 glass of wine, you're already in the, if you've had more, you're in the heavy alcohol consumption category, and your chances, your risk for developing early onset colon cancer has gone up 27%. So that's something that you can definitely do to decrease your risk of early onset colon cancer. Just cut out alcohol altogether.
So just one quick question as well. Is it painful for people to have colon cancer if it hasn't been diagnosed? Is it something that they should, is there a warning sign that they should be looking out for?
So it could be completely painless.
That's scary.
Early on. If you started to have abdominal pain, chances are it's progressed. And so that's why screening is so important, and paying attention to these symptoms and getting evaluated early on is so important. You know, you talked about, you know, what could be a worst case scenario. I had a patient who was in his 50s. His wife had passed away from a different cancer. He had colon cancer. He ignored the signs, didn't get screening, and ended up dying in his mid-50s, leaving his 2nd grade son an orphan. And so this is the thing about cancer. I mean, yes, the patient suffers, the patient can die, but you know, the people who are left, the family members, they also have to live with the legacy of cancer, and they can be suffering as well. So this is a very important topic, and I'm so glad that you brought it up. And even young people should pay attention to this and pay attention to their symptoms, and also follow a healthy lifestyle so that they can prevent colon cancer and many other cancers as well.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Tan. Thanks to you. I think we learned about the symptoms and what to look out for from now on. Thank you.
Thank you.
And as Dr. Tan mentioned, I think it's about, if you ever catch a disease, you can, you know, you never know it could happen to you, right? But I think a lot of people from our generation, because we're so young, we overlook it. We're like, oh, we're still young, we'll still be healthy. But that's not the case. You should always be aware of the dangers and drawbacks you have to suffer with once you get a disease, right?
That's right. I mean, health is always #1 priority. I've actually lost a few friends and family in the past few years to cancer, and I really hope that they come up with a cure for all kinds of cancer out there. But until then, like we mentioned, we should do our personal best to take care of ourselves, screening, monitoring, and I know this sounds cliche, but we should always remember that each day we're given is not to be taken for granted.
Such a blessing. And also, as Dr. Tan mentioned, I sort of reflected back on how I've been eating, especially my alcohol consumption as well.
The red meat.
I never knew that 1 glass of wine per day was only considered moderate, and like 1.5 glasses would be considered heavy drinking.
Which is what you usually drink.
No, not every day. But that's what you think, like the little habits you have in life pile up, and then you can be diagnosed with a scary disease that it's really hard to turn back.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the reason why I asked as well. Like when I was going through this episode, I felt like, should I be looking out for more signs? I mean, I enjoy my food. I think everything in moderation though, and I think that when it comes to like unhealthy foods and healthy foods, but that also shocked me, the fact that 1 glass of beer could also be a reason.
A can of beer.
But yeah, so Korea luckily has a good system for health checkups every year, so I'm definitely going to go and see something.
Take advantage of that.
And especially now that you have a daughter too. You have a family, and as Dr. Tan mentioned, it's not only about you being sick, it's about, you know, the legacy that you're leaving with your family. That's why health matters. And all right, we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Nelson and Walter Lee.
See you next time.
All right, now thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.
한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, look my way. Make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.